Hello everyone, welcome back to my home buying series. This is part 4 of my home buying series, and in today's video we're going to be talking about your due diligence, aka getting an inspection. I don't know if you realized this from my last video, but I put so much emphasis on this part of the process because this is going to determine whether or not you even want to move forward with the property. Let's say you have an inspection done and you find out so many things regarding the plumbing, the HVAC, and those sort of things, and you figure out that it's going to cost you X amount of $1,000 to fix it. You're probably not going to move forward with this property because you didn't want to get into a situation where off rip it's going to cost you more than you thought you were going to need to invest. So in this video, I'm going to go into detail of what you should be looking at in your inspection report, what you should be looking at when hiring an inspection company, and so many other things that are going to come up when you are in this part of your home buying process. So let's get into it. Apologies if you hear my dog. He gets really excited sometimes when people are walking. Anyway, let's start with finding an inspection company. Now, your realtor may mention someone that they know, or they may say, oh, I've used so-and-so in the past, but you always want to do your own research, okay? This means going on Google and typing in home inspectors near me. Simple as that. And then looking at a few companies and looking at their reviews. What are people saying about their home inspections? Are people coming back to review after the fact? Let's see what people are saying, from last week, last month, and last year. You want to get a good understanding of who you are hiring to come out and inspect your home because you want to make sure that they're going to do a good job. I would highly recommend that you don't get caught up in how much the home inspection costs, because at the end of the day, if everything checks out, you want to move forward with this home and feel comfortable knowing that everything that is, could possibly go wrong with this home has been inspected. And let's say you get you pay for your inspection and it doesn't turn out to be what you thought it was. $500 now saves you $5,000 in the future. So keep that in mind when searching for an inspector to come out and view your property for you. Now, you want to be present when the inspector is there, so plan to take a day off or plan to do it on a weekend if your contract allows you. But remember that you are up against a timeline, so you want to make sure that you schedule this at a time that's convenient for both you and the contract and the inspectors. And you don't have to be there for the entire inspection. I actually don't recommend it because it takes about 2 hours per inspector, and it depends on the size of the house as well. But you do want to show up at the later half of it, and you can ask them, and good ones will tell you, hey, I'll be done at this time. You can show up 15 minutes prior and I'll do a walkthrough with you and let you know everything that I found. In my experience, I've had inspectors that go into super detail, and to the point where it's just kind of like, did I need to know about this wood chip that was sticking out in the back deck? And I've had experiences where inspectors were like, oh, everything looks great, and you're kind of like, are you sure? Like, you didn't find anything? So a good mix would be someone who does their due diligence and does their, inspection, and they walk you through the major components, and then they walk you through kind of, things that aren't necessarily an issue right now, but could potentially become issues down the line. Here are the things that your inspector is supposed to check for, and this is based on the International Home Inspection Standards of Practice. I looked this up because I don't want anyone to go through what I went through, so hear me out. If your inspector is a part of any, nationally recognized association, these are basically the simple things that they're supposed to check. The major things that they are supposed to check. Number 1, the inspection details. You want to make sure your report accurately notates whether or not the client was present, because let's say down the line something comes up and the inspector had on the report that you weren't there when you actually were there. You want to make sure that that's notated, and if it's wrong, it would be worth reaching back out to your inspector to have them go back and add that into their report. Next thing that your inspector is supposed to check is the roof. So I've had an inspector where they will literally fly a drone out on the roof and they will tell you everything about that roof. and they will let you know that it may need to be repaired soon, or this roof is in perfect condition, or this roof is in terrible condition. You might want to ask the seller to replace it before you purchase this property. They are essentially checking for any signs of roof damage or anything that could potentially come to bite you in the near future or in the later future. Next thing an inspector is going to check is the exterior of the home. So this is basically a walkthrough of the entire perimeter of the home, and they'll basically tell you about things such as potential leaks or potential foundation issues. You want to be aware of this because this can be a very expensive fix in the future. So you want to make sure your home is on a solid foundation and that there aren't any areas where the home could potentially, sink in. Now let's go inside of the house. So your inspector is going to check your cooling and heating system. This is also known as your HVAC unit. And this is really important because you want to make sure that every part of the house is getting heat and air to the, from the HVAC unit. You want to make sure the HVAC unit is the proper size. All of these things are really important when purchasing a home because you don't want to have to move in and then pay someone to come and fix these issues that the seller should have had fixed in the first place. Check things such as the living room, the dining room, your kitchen. They'll make sure all of the appliances are working as they should. They'll make sure that your dishwasher is connected, and if there is a dishwasher, they'll make sure that water is getting to it. You want to make sure, side note, you want to make sure that the seller has all utilities turned on during the inspection. Otherwise, the inspector will bill you for their time and won't even do an inspection because none of the utilities were turned on. So you want to make sure that you communicate that your agent actually communicates this to the seller's agent that all utilities have been turned on. Check everything like your kitchen and your bathrooms and your dining rooms, your laundry room. They want to basically make sure that all of the pipes and all of the electricity is working as it should. Otherwise, these are things that you can easily take back to the seller and say, hey, we need to fix this before I move forward in this contract. A major one is plumbing. Your inspector should be checking the water pressure, should be checking whether or not water is standing, meaning if you turn water on in the bathtub, is water going to sit in there for the next hour? If you turn the water on in your kitchen sink, is there going to be water in there for an hour? Those sort of things is what they're checking for when they look into the plumbing section of your report. You also want to notate whether or not your home is septic or city, meaning whether or not it's attached to a city sewage, or are you sitting on what is known as a septic tank where essentially all of your waste for your private home goes into, and it should be pumped regularly on an annual basis, if I'm not mistaken. Electrical is another major thing, and essentially what this looks like is your inspector going around to each outlet, making sure that they function properly as they should, making sure that nothing is overcharged or undercharged, and the wiring is done as it should. Now, if your house has an attic, a basement, or a garage, this will also be inspected by the inspector to make sure that it's functioning as it should and that you won't experience any issues in the future. For example, if you have a garage, they want to make sure it's on its hinges and it's operating as it should, and that if it was added to the home, that it was added properly. Now, I will say the inspection piece is a bit overwhelming, but just keep in mind the major components such as plumbing, HVAC or heating and air, electrical, and all appliances. Just make sure that all of those are checked out, and pretty much everything else, minus the foundational issues, are pretty much okay to move forward with. But again, I think every issue that your inspector brings up should be addressed with the seller of the property and the seller's agent, and use it as a negotiation tool so that you can potentially make a lower offer, or you can say, hey, we won't close this deal until you fix these issues. One thing I will also say is that inspectors are not code inspectors, meaning they are not people from the city that are coming in to check every single code violation that your home has. They may not even know what the codes are. What they are to inspect is the latent defects or material defects, meaning things that the natural home buyer wouldn't notice, but an inspector should inspect to notify the home buyer. Once you're made aware of these issues and you move forward in the home buying of the property, once you are made aware of these issues, and let's say that you don't include them as a negotiation tactic or you don't present them to the seller, you are essentially buying the home with the understanding that these are the issues and you're buying it as is, essentially. So it's very important to let the seller know the condition of the home and see if you can use it as a negotiation tactic. Let's say the seller decides that they don't want to move forward with any of these repairs and they are not willing to do this in order to close the deal. Then at that point you have to decide whether or not you want to move forward as is, or if you want to pull out of the contract, which is completely acceptable because of your due diligence contingency. So don't feel obligated to move forward with the property if the inspection report doesn't come out as you wish it would. I hope this was really helpful to someone looking to purchase a home. The inspection period is so important to have in your contract. If you can do 10 days, I would recommend that, but typically the average is about 7 days. So you want to make sure that you give yourself enough time to hire an inspection company and to go out and meet your inspector and figure out all of the issues that are wrong with the home and make sure that you are comfortable with moving forward with this process. This is typical for first-time home buyers or those looking to purchase a primary or secondary residence. Typically, investors will skip this period altogether and buy a house as is because they plan on doing a full renovation. So unless you're planning to do a full renovation, I highly recommend that you take note in this step of the process and understand that it is so important. I can't express that enough. So if you have any questions, be sure to comment down below and I'll love to answer any questions you have about the inspection period because this piece was so stressful for me. So let me know in the comments. Thank you guys.